In this edition of the News Review, the Italian government has called on people to prepare for a, quote, very long lockdown as the coronavirus pandemic continues to take a massive toll on the country. Italian officials were quoted as saying that the lockdown would only be lifted gradually. The country has so far reported 10,779 deaths and nearly 98,000 infection cases. Spain is yet another worst-hit EU country where authorities have reported 838 new fatalities, which means the death toll has seen the rise for a third consecutive day. It now has nearly 79,000 confirmed cases and over 6,500 deaths. Spanish authorities expect the numbers to ease since the country is under a tight lockdown. Britain has also placed a nationwide lockdown since last week and warns that it could last 6 months or even more.
3 weeks for review, 2 or 3 months to see whether we've really squashed it, but about 3 to 6 months ideally, and lots of uncertainty in that, but then to see at which point we can actually get back to normal. And it is plausible that it could go further than that. We just need to wait to see how successful we've been.
Now, more than 19,500 people in the UK have been tested positive for COVID-19, while over 1,200 have lost their lives. Germany has updated the number of its confirmed cases as well. The infection tally has surged to 57,000 and nearly 500 people have died of the disease. Other countries are taking measures to stem the virus spread. Russia has ordered a partial lockdown starting on Monday as the number of confirmed cases there also exceeds 1,500. France carried out its largest evacuation of COVID-19 patients to date from hospitals on Sunday, warning of an influx of serious cases in the coming days. France's death toll currently stands at 2,606, while the number of infections has jumped to more than 40,000.
2 or 3 months to see whether we've really squashed.
Now, to discuss that further, we're joined by our correspondent Ahmed Cabello out of London, and also Mr. Tony Gosling, and journalist, also joining us live. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's start with our correspondent from London with more updates from Britain. 6 months or more, Ahmed. That is a very long time.
It is, and I think people are concerned about just how it will last. So initially for 3 weeks. Now we're told it could be 3 to 6 months. And then the Deputy Chief Medical Advisor said it could potentially be much longer than that. And I think some people are starting to think that had we have taken more strict measures at the beginning and taken this thing very seriously from the start, instead of trying with this herd immunity approach, which was denounced by the World Health Organization, which was not copied by any of our neighboring countries, then potentially would be a lot further ahead than we are right now. There are currently over 1,000 deaths, 1,228. But what's more worrying is over the weekend, 3 doctors died, 2 of them surgeons. 2 of the surgeons, one surgeon was from Iraq, 1 surgeon was from Sudan, and the other doctor was from Sudan. And it tells us 2 things. It tells us just how reliant the National Health Service is on foreign workers, but it also shows that there's not quite enough personal protective equipment to keep these doctors safe at work. So what the British government has done is asked many doctors that are in retirement to come out of retirement to help with the heavy load and help with the crisis. But what some doctors have said is we won't come out of retirement until the personal protective equipment is in place. 6,000 tests were taken on Sunday, but it's well short of the government's target of 10,000 tests a day. 25,000 is what Boris Johnson promised. So the government's made some big promises, yet it's failed to deliver, and that's why people are concerned about where we are and where this could lead to.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Cabello, our correspondent from London. Also, Mr. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist. Mr. Gosselin, what is your opinion regarding how the response has been? Is this enough? And when we talk about periods such as 6 months or even more, how does that translate into not just only the economy of European countries, but world economy as a whole?
Well, the economic question is an enormous one, isn't it? We have to remember that the world economy was basically on a life support system anyway, and many of us were suspecting that after Brexit something would happen, the global economy might crash. Well, what we've seen is another completely different sort of incident, not a stock market crash, although this could lead to one, in the global economy, much more than anyone could have guessed. I actually speaking to you from New Zealand, Coromandel, near Auckland, which is in a very similar situation to Britain, but I've been in constant contact daily with people in the UK, and they tell me that the lockdown there in the cities is similar to actually what it is here in the countryside in New Zealand, which is this whole idea really of a kind of wary camaraderie. So people are kind of saying hello to each other across the street where they wouldn't have maybe normally. They'd have just walked past, and even waving and acknowledging each other's presence. Something that you might expect to do in the middle of nowhere, say on a footpath or something, but not the normal sort of thing to happen in a city. So that's been one of the most interesting transformations. But let me just pick you up on the 1,228 deaths in the UK. I think we've got to start questioning these numbers of deaths caused by COVID-19, because doctors have been instructed, this is what I've been told, my contacts tell me, the doctors have been instructed that if coronavirus has played a part in somebody's death, then it must be put down as the cause of death at the moment, so that the government can, on the death certificates that is, so the government can clearly track this day to day. But of course, most of the people who've died have had pre-existing conditions. So we're talking about things like diabetes, asthma, heart disease, those many of whom are already been under severe treatment for those diseases, have found that the coronavirus, if I can put it this way, has tipped them over the edge. So those cases I think we need to look at separately to those people who have just died of the coronavirus and nothing else, maybe considering there may be a quarter of one death, because we have to be very sensible about this. The media, I think, has been, and I worked with many people in the mainstream media, and they love sensationalizing any story because they want to get more coverage than the competition, and sensational stories always gain more coverage. And I can tell you, I think that many people in the press, in the West particularly, have been rushing to make a sensational story, and they have not really been interrogating and questioning, particularly these daily figures we've been getting, and as well as they should have been. And I think there needs to be some questioning about the techniques of how we distinguish between those people who have died of pre-existing conditions and those that don't. Otherwise, we're not going to get proper statistics. And I think the other problem is to do with the testing. So we may have many people who have actually got the disease but haven't been tested, because the testing regimes are very, very different in different countries. So again, we're getting problems with the actual figures that are coming out. They sound good, the figures, but we need, I think, to question much more. As for the duration of the lockdown, obviously people are concerned. We were told initially this was going to be for 3 weeks. What I've read in the international press is that this is most likely to be something that lasts for 18 months. Now that's a long time, and the reason for that is because as the lockdown eases off, what will most likely happen is the virus will start picking up again, and then there'll have to be another lockdown, and we may have to go through a series of lockdowns over a long period of time, which could be as long as 18 months. And they're basically saying the only way that this will finish is when there is a vaccine has been discovered for the virus, and that could also take about 18 months, which is giving the length of this period. So I think what we've seen, particularly from Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern here in New Zealand and Boris Johnson in Britain, is a shifting of the goalposts. So they're saying they're letting us into this gently, saying, oh, it's only going to be a short period, and then extending it and then extending it. So I think what we're going to see is the goalposts are shifting. We have to be very careful careful when the politicians in charge are not being straight with us right from the very start. It starts to feel like they're using game theory to push this agenda through, and that maybe that the advisors that they're getting are not giving all the straight facts. So they're taking that advice on face value. There may be other agendas. We've seen in Britain that there's been an enormous change in the number of predicted deaths from something like many millions. This is from the chief statistics advisor for Imperial College. Way down. As soon as the lockdown was in place, those figures were revised right down. So I think we need to be taking very careful note of when the goalposts are shifting, and they are shifting. Did very much with the initial lockdown in Britain was announced. So we need to be interrogating, and we can't do that because quite a lot of the media has been closed down. My own programme in Bristol, current affairs programme we do every week with the local politicians and MPs, being closed down indefinitely. So we're not interrogating as we should be. Good journalism is asking the difficult questions, and I think for many journalists now, what they're doing is simply regurgitating what the government is saying without asking the difficult questions, like the one I started with about the number of actual deaths due to the virus or due to several diseases. This needs to be sorted out, I think, straight away.
Thank you very much. Those were very important issues you pointed out. Of course, it's not so many shows across the world have been closed down indefinitely because of this COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we're Ahmed, but I just want you to give us a quick overview. I believe that this COVID-19 pandemic has given us a chance to look back at history, take a look at the forgotten pandemic, the Spanish 1918 flu. And at that time, we do understand it took about 2 years or even more, and 1 out of 4 people died. Do you think that there are lessons there that we could learn from today?
Yes, I mean, I'm not a historian, but from what I understand about the Spanish flu, it was very much a unified effort to defeat it. Now, here in this modern time, with the COVID pandemic, we're seeing the United States worsen the problem by increasing sanctions against the Islamic Republic of Iran, increasing sanctions against Venezuela, and also declaring an arrest warrant for the democratically elected president of Venezuela. So what we need to see is true global solidarity. Places like China and Cuba sending out doctors, Venezuela sending out planes. We need to see countries working together and for sanctions to be lifted and for it to be a true global effort. Because when people and entities use a tragic situation like this, a health pandemic, to then exercise their own regime change policy and their own imperialist projects, then it only exacerbates the problem and makes it worse. And particularly in the United States now, there's more recorded COVID-19 cases than anywhere else. And American people will be asking, why is our country escalating aggression against other nations while we're suffering so much at home?
Thank you very much, our correspondent Ahmed Cabello out of London, and Mr. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist out of New Zealand. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your comments, and thanks to all of our viewers for following this edition of the News Review.